ended up in technology based on my identical twin sister's skills.
Hold on. Explain that.
They looked at me and said, "You're hired." I could not type.
There's something that you never publicly spoke about.
Back in 2007, I almost lost my house to pre-foreclosure, and I'm a real estate agent.
Tell us about that.
I called my mortgage servicer and I said, "Hey, I am not going to be able to pay my mortgage next month."
How do you keep them going when deals aren't happening yet?
The hardest part about being an entrepreneur is I have to give myself the work.
I'm going to manifest this business, but I'm not working at all.
Now, I do believe in positive confessions. I do believe that you can confess every day, but you still got to work.
Welcome to Outside the Corporate Box. I'm JMan alongside Jeffrey Scott Stanton, and this episode is brought to you by our founding partners, Wise Agent Subi and the CE Shop. These are the companies that believe in what we're doing here, and we're grateful to have them in our corner.
The playbook is changing. The question is, are you changing with it? This is Outside the Corporate Box, real conversations with real leaders who broke the mold and built something better, with your hosts, JMan and Jeffrey Scott Stanton.
She walked away from a tech career with small kids at home, no safety net, and a business plan that existed mostly in her mind. 29 years later, she's a managing broker in 3 markets, a national speaker, and one of the most trusted educators in real estate. This is Outside the Corporate Box, and this is one of those conversations. So today we're sitting down with Carrie Little. She's a managing broker in Illinois and Florida, the founder of Smart Girl Media, a national speaker, a best-selling author, and one of the most recognizable voices in real estate technology and education. But what I really want to get into, or what we want to get into today, is how she built all of that while the industry was still trying to figure out the internet. Carrie, welcome to Outside the Corporate Box.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, let's go back to before real estate, the corporate box, right? Because it's outside the corporate box. So you were working in tech, not just casually, like we're talking NEC Technologies, national training gigs, television production. Just paint the picture for us.
So I could go way back. I ended up in technology based on my identical twin sister's skills. She worked.
Wait, hold on. Explain that.
So when right out of high school, I was a young mom, and because I worked for a company called Sears, Roebuck and Company. If you haven't heard of them, they're gone.
Yep.
But then there was the Sears Tower. So I worked for Sears, Roebuck and Company, and my last job at Sears was in custom decorating. A fun fact is I used to actually, I know how to make clothes. I was a clothing designer all the way through high school, and that's what I went to college for. But when everything shifted, I became a young mom. When I was in the custom decorating department at Sears, I wanted to do something different. Now, my twin sister worked for a company here in Illinois, and she was a temp agent. Now, when the temp job ends, she left, and usually these temp companies don't want to hire you because they have to buy out the contract. So she already had a new job. They called her and said, "Hey, we'd like to hire you now." And she said, "I'm sorry, I already have a job, but I have a twin." I literally went to the interview, sat down, and they looked at me and said, "You're hired." I could not type. I had to go and take a typing class in the local college. And I'm kind of glad I didn't do it in high school, because they used to do it on typewriters and IBM Selectric. I learned on a computer. So that is how I ended up in tech.
So what was that job for?
What was it for? It was Kassane Business Systems. They used to actually put together the computers for a company called Boston Chicken, Boston Market now, and McDonald's Corporation.
Very cool.
So I became an admin to the vice president of the company, and I couldn't type. And I was doing their billing. I was working with their, I want to say the department that actually went in and repaired the typewriters, the computers. And so again, I knew how to write a letter, but not type one. The vice president literally coached me through my entire job. And that's how I ended up in tech. And then from there, I went to NEC Technologies. And then from NEC Technologies, because I was a volunteer at the church. I always say, I used to edit for a nonprofit, but the truth is churches today, you see big mega churches. It was a large church. I used to volunteer and actually edit television and work big cameras.
Where'd you get that skill set from?
From the church. They trained us. And here's Joel Osteen actually came to our church to put our systems together better before he became the pastor in the church that he pastors now.
Very, very cool.
So I used to
Very
edit on
cool.
an Avid. You know, we could talk for hours on tech, but that is literally how I ended up in tech.
So that was a non. I'm just
Like little Joel Osteen, I think, just like
yeah.
like Joel Osteen came in and they just like throw out. It's like name dropping without name dropping.
Well,
Carrie.
but that nonprofit show that ran on like Channel 9, TLN, like that was
Yes, it was
kind of a big deal, right?
It was because I used the cameras first. I had been to the NSB or whatever the broadcasting conference was in Las Vegas. I literally learned hands-on how to edit television, and it was broadcast to the Total Living Network, to Central America, and through WGN.
Very cool.
Things you learn that you didn't know.
How long did you do? How long did you do that for?
So let me think. It was before, so around maybe 97.
Okay.
Around, let me think. Let me go back. Because Lauren, 99. Yeah, around 97-ish. And that's kind of how I ended up a little bit in real estate around that time, because I was working for the local church, and then I decided to buy real estate, and that's how I ended up working on the weekend for a builder, and that's what pushed me into real estate.
So tell us about that. So you go from, pretty much as we said, inside the corporate box to having a 9-to-5 or a paid job where you get a paycheck, and then decide to buy a house and get into real. It's weird because a lot of people do that. They decide, I'm going to buy a house. They have either a bad experience buying that house, or they realize, hey, I could do this better, or realize, hey, maybe I can save some money. Why start doing real estate on the weekends?
Yeah, small kids at home.
So first of all, now because I'm still involved in the church, one of my friends that worked at the church, she was a real estate agent, and we started talking about it, and I'm like, I want to buy a house. And so she started talking me through the process, and I decided first of all, I decided I wanted to buy a house because I was sick and tired of paying rent. And at that time I only had one kid at home who was getting close to the age of 9. So a little easier to kind of volunteer to work full time at the church and work part time with a builder.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up buying the house, and then I was still working on the weekends for the builder. And, I know every state is different with their license law. You can get a referral fee when you refer people to buy, but it was only at the time up to about $1,500. And I probably sold more new construction, and I wasn't getting paid because I was the host. I was the person that would say, here, fill this out. And then you would work with a sales rep. I was the one driving in my car to open up doors. And that was what drove me to get to the point where I wanted to get into real estate. Now, back up, the person that ended up helping me buy was also a very prominent real estate agent, and she was an educator. So she's the one that helped me get into the real estate space. And of course, now she's an attorney.
So you went from the production space, tech to production, to builder and being the door opener or the note, registering people in.
Almost like an unlicensed assistant at that point.
Yeah, I would say, all I was doing is welcoming you in, saying if you had any questions about the models, I would tell you where the models were. I could show you the lots, but I couldn't sell it to you. But I was the one that was selling it because I had bought in the subdivision. I knew more about the subdivision than the people that were working there because I was vested.
Yeah, and in most states, they actually let you, if you're directly employed by a builder, you can do all that stuff without being licensed. So were you still doing the production and everything for the church at the same time?
Yeah, that was during the week. And so, yes, I was still, editing television. And then there was a pivot because in 99, during all of this, I was about to finish my undergrad. So in 99, I graduated from college. I was still kind of working part-time with the builder. And then I stopped working at my local church full-time because I wanted to be more available for the kids. So I was working for another church where I learned more about finances, more about creating their brochures, which then I had an opportunity to get licensed. So I was working part-time at a different church, got my real estate license, and I started selling real estate. So I had one goal, and it was only to make $60,000 a year and take my kids to the swimming pool every summer, because this is 2001, and be available for them when they went to school for sports. That was why I got into real estate.
So what was it like leaving, like lack of a better word, a guaranteed paycheck versus going into real estate?
So first of all, and I might be a little more driven than others. I had in the past hosted trade shows for creatives and things like that. So I was used to trying to figure out how to make extra income. So that wasn't a fear for me. And I did have a dual household income, so that helped a little bit. But I knew I wasn't going to have the same income. What I do have the gift of, which all of us do as instructors, is the gift of I like to talk. And back then we had email, but and if we had, and we think about our phones, I had like a BlackBerry. We weren't calling people, but what I did do good at was having home buyer workshops and telling everyone I was about to get my real estate license, don't do anything. And lucky enough for me, they weren't smart enough to say no. So I had closed 3 transactions before 9/11, and I thought, this is the best hustle ever. I had made, and I had a goal, and I don't know, how people think today. Well, I kind of have an idea, but if you have a goal, and I had a goal of I wanted to pay off some debt, I literally knew if I made 60,000, and back then, and I know there are all different kinds of models, but you know what those models were like when you started selling real estate. So if it was 60,000, how much I was probably making.
Mhm.
That was my goal, so I could get out of debt fast, and so I could be available for my kids. So I was really motivated. I was walking my neighborhood. I was doing home buyer workshops at least once a quarter.
So in your first 90 days, then you knew you were in the right business, right? Like you said, like the people business, you're good at talking, you're driven, you kind of have a very specific goal. Like what specifically happened when you, like in those first 90 days where you like, because a lot of people was like, oh, I did it for a year and I struggled and I didn't.
Yeah, I dabbled,
For me, it was, I had to make it work. And so I'll say my first of all, so I remember going to the local college to take the real estate licensing class. And once I passed the exam, right, even before that, I had called everyone I knew, because we weren't texting anybody. We weren't emailing anybody. I saw you at church, and I'm like, I'm getting my license. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm thinking about it. So within my first 15 days, I had a listing. And then it closed 30 days later. And then everywhere I went, when I
You're
talked
like,
to people,
yo, this is easy.
I was like, I think it can be like that for everyone. It's just people are afraid of making mistakes. And I wasn't afraid to make a mistake. We have people that come to class, they show up, and they're the smartest, brokest agent because they won't, for a lack of a better statement, pull the trigger. And I asked, and when someone was like, well, you're new, I'm like, I'm new, but I got this broker over here who's helping me. And if I don't know, I'm going to go ask. And just like, they trained us to say, you want me because I'm more motivated because I don't have any clients.
And it's weird now, as you said that, it's weird now because if you told an agent to go out there and tell someone, hey, I'm motivated, you choose me because I don't have anybody else, that agent would be like, no, I can't say that, I can't say that. But to me, that's the truth. Like, I always want my salesperson hungry. Like, people always say, oh, I want to do the person, I want the top producer. To me, a lot of top producers aren't hungry anymore. It's that scrappiness, for lack of a better word. It's that hustle that I think, hey, this is my goal. I need to do that. $60,000. I need to pay off this debt. I want somebody that's hungry, not somebody with a.
And what's interesting about that is there are a lot of people that only want the top producer, just like you said. And I'm good with that. I went, and there's always a story, and I have permission to share this one. My identical twin, when she was in Illinois, her husband at the time didn't want to hire me because I was too new.
Mm.
And I was like, fine, I'll get the top producer to come list your house, because I knew I could make an income by referring. And so they had an open house to interview people. And so, of course, they hired the person I sent because when I tell, and she's still a top producer today, they hired her. But guess who brought in the buyer?
You.
So in my mind, sometimes sometimes you do have to prove yourself, especially with family. But for me, when it comes to family, I'm like, you don't have to hire me, but this is how I make a living. So if you don't want me in your business, allow me to refer you to a producing agent because you're going to call me to complain about them anyway. So you might as well allow me to get paid from it.
I like that. You're going to call me anyway to complain about whoever you pick, so
I
you might
love
as well
that.
at least let me deal. I like that. I really do.
Because it's real and authentic, right?
And even because she now has purchased in California, and I referred her to an agent that volunteers. And when she received 3 offers on her property, she was like, I got an FHA and I got a home sell and a home close contingency. I don't think I should take this FHA. I'm like, what? I said, tell me about the FHA. And she was like, well, it says they're fully underwritten. I was like, you're taking the FHA because they're fully underwritten and they can close and you don't have to worry about contingencies. So that's why you want me to refer, because I'm a backup to helping coaching you through the process because I'm family.
So, and you said that, so coaching the process, do you think that's where do you think where does that come from? Because a lot of agents aren't, and a lot of brokers aren't into, hey, I'll coach you through the process. Just this is what the process, do what I say, and now walk away. What do you think that ability to educate, and I know you're an educator like we are, so where does that come from?
I think it comes from I'm the person that things didn't come easy to me in school. I could say unless I was using my hands. I was really good at love PE, love wood shop in high school, and I love sewing. So when someone would take their time with me and make me not feel uncomfortable, it made the process so much easier. So I can tell you what to do, but I've learned if I coach you through the process and give you what you want, not what I want, you are more likely to refer me later. And I'll say this,
Mm.
I just had a transaction, and I don't, my husband gets mad at me when I say this. I typically don't sell because I manage. I manage agents, but there are times when I come back outside to sell because it puts me in the business so I can see what's happening. And I had a transaction where we were the largest house in the city. I knew we were testing the market, but I had done all of my research, and the owners they could have picked someone else with the company, but they picked me. And so I knew I had to provide more value, but you want me because I'm an instructor, because I'm in the tools every single day. And so when we got an offer, I think they wrote the offer based on what we negotiated, hoping that it wasn't going to appraise. But I'm like, you got me. I train the appraisers in my state. So when it came in a little bit lower, who went in and did an appeal, and who won the appeal?
So it's weird. So I'm going to back up. So you said, this is totally off script. So you said, like, going through school, you like to do the hands-on stuff, and you also said you like to educate people and walk people through the process. But when you explained about learning how to type, and that the boss, the executive, helped you, walked you through that process and learn how to do it. And then you talked about the studio, and then the Joel Osteen team coming in, setting you guys up, and walking you through the process. To me, that's why I said, this is all outside the corporate box. There's a theme there. And I think a lot of times we realize it or don't realize it, that step from that corporate box gives us our foundation to actually do what we do. So, like, why? And I totally understand, getting into real estate, you can do what you want in real estate. So what do you think that skill set actually is from what you did previously? Like you were tech. Like, how does that come into it? How does all the thing you've done in the past bring into making you successful now?
I believe everything you've done in the past puts you and helps you today. Because and I am very tech savvy by mistake. I just kind of got lucky because of how they hired me. But, the things we didn't talk about were, I used to work in retail. I used to work in custom decorating. And when you hear the word custom decorating, what does that mean? I was the person that sat behind the desk that looked at the measurements for shades and blinds and draperies. And then I was the person, even in my high school, that actually worked with the teachers because I worked in the tailor department. So I understood processes and I understand how to finish. And so, when you bring back and tie in all of the corporate and those processes,
Right.
it does help in the world of real estate because I learned how to write a letter. I learned how to use Microsoft Excel. I learned, even in my master's degree program, how to use SPSS Modeler or SAS, things that we can use in our businesses today. So being able to go back and look at all of the processes I learned, I'm sure has definitely shaped the way I run a business and a company today.
It's funny because we talk a lot when we do trainings about like take your background from what you did prior to getting into real estate and put that real estate spin on it. And so many, and I know a lot of people listen to this maybe thinking about, hey, I'm listening to this because I'm in a corporate box and I want to start real estate or I want to start my own thing. I think you need to understand what your skill set is, as you explained it, prior to getting into real estate. And that's why you're good at what you do. And I think that's like almost like an epiphany, eye-opening to a lot of people. Realize like, hey, I was a tennis instructor. What does that have to do with anything? You can find what that has to do with it.
Yeah. Or even just, I've had people say, I don't know anything about real estate. And I'm like, have you walked in a house? Have you lived in a house? Have you walked past a house? My grandmother used to work for a builder um, as an administrative assistant. So because she worked for a builder in the city I grew up in, it helps me have better conversations. My mother is a history buff and knows everything about the suburban marketplace. I wouldn't say marketplace of the suburbs outside of Chicago. And so when we have conversations, I can remember who built what used to be a swamp. So family, everything you've learned from your parents, everything you've learned, playing with friends, how you played, to, you're being just working. Listen, if you worked at McDonald's and somebody threw a hamburger at you and you didn't react, you got a special set of skills. Because
I don't know what to say to that one, Amber.
You have patience and you can overcome challenging situations.
Right. Because I've worked at McDonald's, but never in the store. I worked in corporate in East Coast real estate division. So I've been
catch that burger.
You name it.
I think JMan tells a story about a slippery chicken that's similar to that. So I'm going to, JMan, jump in here about one other question. What point did it all start making sense and like, hey, this is me, this is my calling, this is what I'm going to do as far as real estate and honestly, to me, more importantly, is when did you start, like, do you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
I probably consider myself an entrepreneur but as young as being a kid, because I used to, my twin sister and I would always talk about teaching. We would always try to sell things, from the lemonade stand to when I was in high school, I was a cheerleader. And because I knew how to sew, I was the person that made all of the uniforms for our cheerleading team so we could go and compete every summer in summer camp. So I knew that I can't say knew that I would be an entrepreneur, but I was always trying to do something different. Now, there are days when I wish I was born, like 15 years ago, because this next generation has so much opportunity because they have access to social media. Everything is so much faster. I'm not complaining about when I was born, but I truly believe that if you get into real estate today and you just tie in what you've learned in the past, you have so much more opportunity and you can do it a whole lot faster than we did.
Cool.
So, yeah, I think easily I could say that I was probably an entrepreneur, as a kid. I was selling something to somebody.
Quick shout out to one of our founding partners, Wise Agent. If you're in real estate and you're still juggling 5 different tools to manage your business, do yourself a favor. Wise Agent is the all-in-one CRM that helps you manage your contacts, automate your follow-up, and actually grow your business without the tech headache. Built-in texting, email marketing, landing pages, task management, and real support from people who understand this industry. Check them out at wiseagent.com. Link in the show notes and tell them J Squared sent you. Well, and when you say identical, you guys, I ran into her sister at a conference and I thought it was Carrie. I was like, girl, what's up? She's like, hey. I'm like,
Hey, who are you? It's like,
why are you being weird? She's like, I'm like, I had no idea. It's identical. It's funny.
Yeah, and I'll say there is some positives about having a twin. I that
You
so
can get their job if they don't want.
over a year ago I was supposed to speak in California, and I got the flu during our state business meetings, and she lives in California, and my twin teaches tech, and she knows how to code, and because the talk was going to be on AI, I was like, "Hey, I am not getting on a plane. I am so sick, but my twin is like 20 minutes from you. Can she come speak?" And she went and did my talk.
did they change the name on the billboard of who was presenting, or they keep the same?
They did, and she even went to the installation for the incoming California president, not for Women's Council, and people were coming up to her, hugging her, like, "Hi, Carrie," and she was
Hi,
just like,
Carrie,
"Yeah,
how
but
are you?"
what's the point? We're just going with
Yeah.
this."
I was waiting for Jamie. I was waiting for you to
Yeah.
jump in and ask a question over here.
Well, okay.
I lost track where we were along what
Yeah,
we're supposed
well,
to be
let's-
covering because I just started randomly ask questions.
Yeah, let's talk about money then. Specifically in those early years, you said your biggest risk was not having the money to start. So what was the actual financial picture? What were you working with?
To get started in real estate, first of all, most agents don't realize how much it costs to start, although it is one of the lowest barriers to entry. So I do what a lot of people do, first of all, I decided I was going to take the course. So I called my mother and I was like, "Can you pay for me?" She was like, "Sure." And then I passed the exam and I found out I had to pay the brokerage, I had to pay the association, um, and I had to pay for my license. So what did I do? I called my mother. So I can say that there was that benefit, but I didn't really have money to do marketing. So I really did get creative, and that's why I did the home buyer workshops. And I'm pretty savvy. I didn't know, I already knew how to use PowerPoint and things like that. So what I would do is whenever I would do a home buyer's workshop, I would have a loan officer, and in our state we use attorneys. I would have an inspector, and back then we had partners in charity in the Nehemiah program.
Yep. I remember
So
those.
I would make sure they all did the talking first, and then I would sum it up, and that's how I would at least have 2 or 3 transactions. And not having money at the brokerage I was with, they allowed us to print, and it didn't cost us anything extra. So I was killing a tree. Forgive me, but and let's be clear, I am sure I was violating rules. So I'll give you an example. Now, all my marketing was in compliance because I did show that information, but like I was going into apartment complexes, putting flyers out. But when I learned, okay, you can't do that, I would go to the laundromat and I would put out flyers. I still have this flyer: "Warning, renting is hazardous to your wealth." And I would have the little tabs at the bottom.
That's
And I had closed deals from the laundromat. And then in my townhouse subdivision, I walked my subdivision every single month until it got really cold. And I was the go-to agent in my subdivision. And again, in my mind, I just wanted to make about $60,000 a year. To me, being a top producer didn't matter. I just cared about, making sure I was available for my kids, and we were making a living. Some people have to be number one. I don't ever have to be number one.
Well, and I think there's a gap that a lot of entrepreneurs know, like especially coming from that corporate box where you got your license. Nobody said, "Hey, save money, create a business plan, have 6 months." Like if you went to business school, you would know that. But if it was corporate box, it's like, "Oh, I'm going to get my license and get this." So that gap between looking successful on the outside, which we see these agents like, "I'm rich," but really they're like you said, if they're successful in the beginning, you got to pay for signs. You got to pay for your advertising. You got to get stuff. And you had a mother that would help you, but like, tell us a little bit more about that.
I didn't, luckily for me, I worked for a brokerage that the signs were, you just ordered the sign and it was just a standard sign. And I would say for me, not having to pay for signs, and what I did have to pay for was direct mail. And if I had a listing, to put it in the newspaper, because we didn't have social media.
That? Yeah.
So what I did pay for was marketing, but I learned that if I went to Uline, ULINE.com, now you can go to Amazon, and I would buy the doorknob bags, I stuffed the bags and I walked and I talked to the neighbors, and I went to Bible study with the moms in the area. I went to mothers of preschoolers. I was a co-chair of DuPage chapter Mothers and More. I did the things that put me in groups. And by the way, I didn't get into those groups because I wanted to sell them real estate. I got into those groups because I had kids. Being able to tell them about real estate was a bonus. So even today, just, going to the swimming pool, going biking with your neighbors, working out with your neighbors, walking the neighborhood, even today I still do, we don't do doorknob bags, but I do mail to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
People know that we're real estate agents in our community. So I would say if anybody didn't have money, I would pause and say either what can you stop spending money on, or how can you make sure the people in your community know who you are? Because you could easily have people over for coffee.
Yeah, find a way. I like that, because it's like you can't afford direct mail. You know what I can do? Take some bags and put them on the doorknobs. Now I'm saving money.
It's the sweat equity. It's the sweat equity. So I was going to jump us ahead a little bit. So when did you decide to become a broker?
So I always said I'm going to get my broker license. In Illinois, we call it managing broker now because we like to do all things different. But so I decided to do it in the event I needed to. And I remember so I was licensed in 2001. Around 2007, I passed a broker license. And then around 2016, and Mark can tell his story, but he didn't think he could get a license.
Okay.
And so one day he said, I will get my license if you hold the license. He said, you're not really selling as much anymore. You're teaching more. And why are you paying the fees? So I literally opened the brokerage for my husband because when there were times I needed help, he couldn't help me. So that was around 2016. And I had a strategy. I had a 12-month exit plan.
What do you mean 12-month exit plan?
When I decided I was going to open a brokerage, I started preparing the website, the social media. I opened the company. I knew when I was going to exit, and I'll just say, when you are with a big brokerage, I needed to have new emails set up. So I was forwarding emails to the new email and replying with that email, because many brokerages, and I know it's different now, when you use their client relationship management tool, CRM, they own your data. And I know when I did exit, they were going to still be marketing to my network. So I wanted to start the offline networking with my own database and a new email address. So I had planned for 12 months to leave. And that's when I started the brokerage. And then Mark got his license probably 4 months later.
Cool. I think that's really smart. I think a lot of agents, for lack of a better word, jump ship without putting much thought into it. Or decide, hey, I'm doing my own thing just because a deal blew up, and they fight with their brokerage or make whatever it is. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, now what do I do now? So having that system in place, I think is
and what's interesting that you say that when I opened the brokerage, it wasn't to have agents, but when I opened out, all these people were like, Carrie, I want to come to you. I'm like, wait a minute, wait, hold on. I wasn't ready. And I did take on a super producer and an admin at the time. And I'm glad I did, because it made me go and build all of my standards of practice. But to step back a little bit, that's why I'm involved in real estate. And when I say involved, that's why I show up in person to the local, state, and national events, because it helps me learn what I didn't know. Now, Zoom is fine, or being in an online space is fine, but it made me network differently, and it helped me learn what was happening in the world of real estate faster, so I could come back and educate those in my office. And it made it easier for me to open a brokerage, because you couldn't terrify me anymore, because the Department of Regulations had already done it all, and I saw it so much that I knew how to train agents.
So now you're the broker owner. You start getting agents underneath you. How does it? That's a big shift between, hey, I'm doing this for myself and I'm doing it with me and my husband, and now I'm responsible for other people.
When you're responsible for other people, that's what makes you continue to show up, to make sure you understand license law changes and get it. And I'll say I get involved at a level not a lot of people get involved in. But when you are involved and you're asked to, like, I chaired a committee for our license law rewrite, and that really made it easier for me to educate the agents in the office and help when I'm sponsoring them. So going from just 2 people to as many as 50 made me have better standards of practice, made me, redefine what real estate looked like, because I am looking at social media even differently. That my agents will, I had one agent call me, and he was like, Carrie, you didn't call this other agent and they're violating license law. I'm like, man, it's Sunday and I'm in the store. I haven't even had a chance to look at social media. What it did was it helped my agents police each other, because I was the social media police with my agents, and I would tell them, hey, I do this to protect you. And I tell you once, I tell you twice, but if you get a violation, it's on you, because no one, if you work for me, should have a violation because I know too much. At least it should make you pause. So sponsoring agents is different. I do, and again, I'm a little bit different of a broker owner, meaning when I interview differently, I always say, listen, if you come to me, it's going to feel different, because I am involved at a level that if you work for me, they think you know what I know. So you got to show up to learn. And yeah, that, I could keep going, but I think that's good.
Well, how do you run your day now versus how you ran it when you first started?
When I first started, my goal was I needed a lead. And what I can say is I lead generate probably the same. That was always first, because I knew that that's where my income would come from. Now, today it's a little different, and don't judge me,
No judgment.
but I do have a sheet of paper, a checklist, only because I need to see it in front of me, although I do have it in digital format. So once a week, I print out old school a checklist of what needs to happen as a real estate agent and as a brokerage, and because I'm an instructor. So the difference is I'm more focused and more intentional, and I'm undiagnosed ADHD, and we
I think
do
we all
not.
are. I know JMan.
Right? We do not
Yeah.
like to be told what to do, and we don't like to follow rules. But
Right.
I realized if I gave myself the work, and I kept myself accountable, I was more likely to do it. So differently today is I am not just getting up to do whatever. I am getting up every day on purpose so I could be done working at a certain time on specific things. Now, is it exact the same every single day? No, because if I'm teaching, it's a little bit, that day might not, flow that way. But I do know that typically on a Monday or a Friday is my business development day, and Monday is the just in case I got to go to the dentist or the doctor day.
Well, you just said give yourself the work, and I've heard you say that before. So, how do you, when you're teaching agents, do you kind of give them what you know, your wisdom that you've acquired over the years as a broker owner? Like, do you then pass that on to them? Like you said, they're a version of you. They're expecting Carrie, them to know as much as you do. So how do you give them the work? Like, how do you keep them going when deals aren't happening yet? Like, I don't know if this is the right career.
So I learned this the hard way. I like to tell you what to do, but that doesn't work. So back to what Jeffrey said is I need to know what you've done in your past. I need to know where you've lived. Like, I'm a lifelong resident of Illinois. I might own in Florida and Mexico, but this is where I am. So I want to know where you've worked. I want to know what you've done, and tell me how you work. And then when they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Do you make your bed every day?" No. Okay, because that tells me a lot about your systems. Do you read? Like, tell me about yourself, and then tell me. And when you tell me your day and it's every day is different, then I ask, are you willing to cold call? Oh, no, that doesn't sound fun. Okay, do you like social media? Yes. I ask you a lot of questions, and then I make you tell me what you're willing to do, because once you tell me what you're willing to do, I can structure a plan for you or help you structure the plan, because I can tell you what to do all day, but you're not going to do it. But if you give yourself the work, you are more likely to be successful. My youngest, who's going to be 24, he's an entrepreneur. He's got 300,000 followers on TikTok, makes money online. And I said to him, so what's it like being an entrepreneur? And he was like, yeah, a lot of my friends, they quit. They went to college. He didn't. He was like, the hardest part about being an entrepreneur is I have to give myself the work. And so, and he's an entrepreneur. And if a young person can tell me that, they have figured it out. So whether you've come from corporate or not, if you know you have to give yourself the work, you will be more successful. It's when you hope for the work that you're wondering, like you said, JMan, why is it not working? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to manifest this business, but I'm not working at all.
I do believe in positive confessions. I do believe, but you can confess every day, but you still got to work. Got to do the work.
It's like I'm getting into real estate because I love houses, I love people, I want to make lots of money, and I want lots of free time. Find a different career. That's what happens to be. So, okay, I want to go somewhere I think anyone listening and watching this can benefit from, especially someone who's maybe having a little difficulties right now. And you mentioned, because we send an intake out, that there's something that you never publicly spoke about in this experience, in your experience of
like
from
something
where you are
I've
to where you
never
are
publicly
now.
spoke about. Oh, I got it. Back in 2007, I almost lost my house to pre-foreclosure, and I'm a real estate agent.
Tell us about that.
I was going through a divorce, and I knew that I was not going to be able to pay my mortgage. And I'm in the real estate space. Now, this is right when you were starting to see pre-foreclosures and short sales. So I knew to pick up the phone. And so I called my mortgage servicer and I said, hey, I am not going to be able to pay my mortgage next month. I know I have options, and because I'm a real estate agent and I've taught any of my clients that are in pre-foreclosure, get a 70-page spiral notebook, get a pen, pick up the phone every time someone calls, and don't be afraid to call your servicer. So I have my pen in hand, and everybody I talked to, I wrote down the date, the time, who I talked to, what we talked about. And the first call I made, she said, we can't help you until you don't pay your mortgage. And so I had to take a deep breath and I said, okay. So I didn't pay the mortgage. And then I called and she said, this is what we can do for you. We can give you a 6-month plan where you don't have to pay your mortgage. 6 months came up and I missed the first payment. I called back and I said, I didn't know what I missed the payment. They said, okay, we're going to give you another 6-month plan. So for a year, I didn't pay my mortgage. And many people don't know, because I've said to you, I work for McDonald's East Coast Real Estate Division. That's when I actually went back to work. And that's when I got my broker's license for the just in case. So I was doing 2 things at the same time. I worked at McDonald's as a legal assistant. I learned so much about commercial and franchises. I was the assistant to about 3 attorneys. And then because I was so good at it, I became the assistant to the attorney over that entire department. And then they paid for me to get my paralegal certification through Boston University. So in all of that, I had to go back to work because I needed to pay the bills. And for people that don't know, 2008 was the downturn of the market. Yep. And so I had to figure it out. And I'll say what people might not know is when I went to McDonald's, they said, you have to hang your license. I was a temp. And I said, I'm not hanging my license. I said, I won't come. And they said, no, we really like how you work. They said, will you sign an agreement that you won't try to sell real estate to anyone here? And I said, sure. And that's what I did. And do I still have friends from McDonald's? Yes. Did I learn a lot? Yes. Did they pay for me to get my paralegal certification? Yes. Did it keep me afloat during the change of the market? Did I still sell real estate part-time or some of the time? Yes. And it was a blessing in disguise because I was the kid that was closest to my grandmother. And she ended up having to go on dialysis. So I became more available. So, sometimes all things work out for the greater good. Going through the pre-foreclosure helps, gives me the ability when I talk to people one-on-one to help them understand that no one is perfect. And sometimes you go through, those hard times.
Is there a version of Carrie, not now, but is there a version of you that was like, hey, screw this, I'm done?
In real estate?
just in general, while you're going through the process of, hey, you know, I'm going through pre-foreclosure. This is what's going on. It's like, was there a version of you? Because I know you well enough that it's like you're a worker. You find the work and you just grind it out if you have to. But was there a version of that was just like, because I think we've all been there one time or another, where you're sitting back and you're just like, screw this.
I would say, are there times when I get discouraged and, you know, I have a meltdown? Yes. But I can't say that I have ever wanted to just like screw this and, you know, go back to work. There are days when I'm like, man, I should just go get a real job because then you don't have to deal with, you know, real estate is a hard business. Are there days, even today, where I'm like, oh, this is a lot. I'm done. Yes. But at the end of the day, I know that real estate is where I thrive. Do I have to do real estate for the rest of my life? I would say no. But someone that's in the space, I think educating and bringing the next generation up, that is something that I could do. But you know, even in the pre-foreclosure, I didn't give up because I had kids. And maybe because I'm a mother, it
Mm.
is hard to just say I give up because you always have someone that you are taking care of. So having meltdowns, absolutely. Freaking out, yes. But the give up, no.
Is there anything along your journey, a relationship or something that you had to sacrifice, that you go back and think like, maybe you should have done something differently, maybe something different?
Oh, I would say yes. Now, this is something that I've never even talked about publicly, but my kids know. Because I went through a divorce, I would have done that differently. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have gotten a divorce, but I think I would have taken more time to date differently and not bring people around because my kids, we've talked about it. They were like, "Mom, you just move way too fast. Are they okay today?" Yes. Does everybody get along today? Yes. But if I could go back, I would say, you know,
Yeah.
when you're going through, everybody's going through, and sometimes you don't know you're taking them through the ride with you. So I would say I would have definitely done that differently and listened to people when they were telling me. Because the hardest part is to hear it from someone else when you don't want to hear it.
You've been a voice of real estate for a long time.
97.
Almost 30 years at this point. Is there something you'd go back in the real estate aspect that you wish you told the newer, younger version of you? Not something you tell your students, but like something you would go back, like knowing everything I know now, to yourself 25 years ago. What would be the bit of advice?
I think my advice would be, if you're in the world of real estate, figure out how you can buy property every few years. Do I still own my first house? I have never sold my own properties. Never. Still have them. So I would say, to if you're, you know, my younger version of me, it would have been, when you close a deal, don't just put money aside for your taxes and living and marketing. Put money aside to reinvest. So, you know, we probably own more land in Mexico than the United States, and we have 3 properties in the United States. Oh, wait, no. 1, 2, 3, 4 properties in the United States. But I my younger version would be, buy, because if I could go back to 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, I should at least have 30 properties.
Last question. Same kind of question, but we sit with at the end of every episode. What is one piece of advice that you would give someone who's about to quit their job and bet on themselves? They're at that corporate job. Maybe they're doing what you did a little bit on the weekends, and they're like, I don't know, I need this insurance, I need this guarantee. Like, what piece of advice would you give them?
I would say, before you quit your job, ask yourself, where's your business going to come from? Because if you don't know that, you are going into an arena where it'll feel uncertain. And, you know, and how hard are you willing to work? It is not, you're not going to get extra time. Can you get to the point where you have a team and have extra time? Yes. But it would be, where is your business going to come from? And don't expect your brokerage to give it to you. You have to go build the business.
So have a plan. I love that. Well, Carrie, before we let you go, where can people find you, learn from you, and get into your world?
So to learn from me, you can find me on YouTube, and it's if you literally Google Carrie Joe Little, I come up everywhere. And I have pivoted a little bit because I learned that my friends and family thought all I did was teach. So if you Google me and you end up on social media, I am now speaking to the public and the consumer about real estate. So if you want to learn from me, it is smartgirl.media on Instagram. So, but I would say you could learn from me if you follow me everywhere. And I'm literally Carrie J.O. Little, Carrie Little, Little, everywhere.
Carrie, I want to say thank you very much. Always a pleasure. And I'm going to leave the JMan to close this out.
If that conversation hit you the way it hit us, share it. Send it to somebody who's in the middle of their own moment right now. Subscribe if you haven't already. And next Monday, we will see you back here on Outside the Corporate Box. But before we let you go, we want to say thank you to our founding partners, Wise Agent, Subi, and the CE Shop. They make this show possible, and they are building tools that actually help people in this industry. Check them out. All the links are in the show notes. And thank you, Carrie, for spending some time with us. And thank you to everyone listening and watching. That is not something we take lightly. Now go out there and make it happen.